minute since I've really produced anything here, and that's because I have felt so introverted and in hermit mode with it being in the middle of winter. I work a full-time job, and a lot of the times January is a time where a lot of businesses and companies do like their year ahead planning, and so naturally that has integrated into my personal life. And so it's this constant battle every single year where I sit down and I'm like, okay, just because it's a new calendar year doesn't always mean that I have to resonate with the idea of like goal setting and doing something different, doing things new, or starting new projects. But I'm just sat here because I had a really great phone call with my friend and astrologer Anthony, and every month we do kind of like a mentor session where we talk about business things, and he provides some like feedback, astrology wise and transits, and also just like some creative ideas. And I cherish his friendship and his like expertise so much. And we've had these mentorships for almost a year now, and I just find them so fruitful every single time because he really does provide me some like transits to look out for and what could come to fruition during this time. Because I am in such like a hermit mode right now, I was talking about how I felt like I was struggling with like content wise, or like what I want to do with my platform. And I think it's such a universal feeling right now, especially in the middle of winter. So I'm not gonna like try and push myself, but you know, wintertime is such a time of introspection and kind of reassessing our internal worlds, that naturally what comes of that is like desires and shifts and kind of deciding for ourselves like where do we want to put our energy. I decided to do some divination and consult the spirits because they always have answers, and I feel like they always offer some guidance that I might not be paying attention to specifically. My ancestors specifically, they are very like gentle about the advice that they give, but if they continue to repeat the same message over and over again, it does become a little bit of a tough love, which I need that once in a while. So I consulted the spirits of kind of like, where am I placing my energy that I don't necessarily need to right now? Where should I be placing my energy instead? And like, what kind of guidance do you have for that? And I thought the results were really interesting. So if you're not familiar with tarot, you know, each card has a specific meaning and interpretation, unlike where oracle card readings, it's very much dependent on the creator of that specific deck. I just thought I would share kind of like my personal reflection of the guidance that my ancestor spirits have provided me in terms of this time of my life, and kind of like being in winter and the desire to want to plan, but also like just assessing where I'm putting my energy. So I thought it was really interesting that the first thing that came up was the Queen of Pentacles, of where I am placing my energy but like should not be. And Queen of Pentacles is someone who, to me, really focuses on materials, goal setting, which here we are. So like goal setting, and also just someone who is focusing on some sort of gain, whether it's finances or materials. So, and I thought this was really interesting because, again, so much of what the new year is filled with, especially if you're in a work environment, is that goal setting, is assessing what things we have done in the past that don't necessarily work, and kind of like figuring out new like strategies. So it's interesting that in my personal life, my spirits are saying that this is not what you need to be doing right now. You do not need to be planning. You do not need to be focusing on business plan or strategies, unless obviously it's work related and I have to. But like in my own personal life, it is okay to not have goals, because my energy is not going to be dedicated to this, even though it's really hard for me to resist. Where should I actually be shifting my energy? And I got the Eight of Cups, and the Eight of Cups to me is really about an emotional decision to move on from something that caused emotional turbulence in some way. So instead of planning new things, we are going to walk away and let go of things that are not bringing us emotional fulfillment. So we're not planning anything. We're really just sitting down and assessing, how does each thing that we are doing, or people in our lives, or just like activities that we're doing, like what is filling our cup, and whatever is not, we can let it go. We can just walk away. And so I feel like that's really in alignment with like what I have been doing and where I have been trying to shift my focus, and the decisions that I'm going to be making of like what brings me joy and what doesn't can ultimately help me make goals later on in the springtime, when it is naturally that time of year to do. So then obviously I asked for the guidance of like, how can you, like, what kind of advice do you have for me? And I thought it was so interesting because, again, we have the Ace of Cups, the Knight of Cups, and the Tethered One, or the Hanged Man. And that is really like allowing our emotions to guide us in things that we can look at a different perspective. So looking at a different perspective, kind of not looking at things as like necessarily a fail, being able to look at it from a perspective of like, you know, what is filling that emotional cup, and not necessarily like, is it just like a financial or material gain? Like, what is actually an emotional gain here for you? So that is just a little bit of my own personal insight into kind of what has been going on with me personally, and you know, kind of like the advice that my spirits have provided me. And maybe you're watching this and you resonate with it and you're like, oh yeah, that could also be for me too. I'm definitely not someone who's like a tarot, like I'm not one of those people that's like, if you see this message is for you, because it's not. It was for me. But if you're hearing this and listening to this and it resonates, let me know, because I feel like it is such a universal feeling right now. But I am going to get ready for a meeting that I have at noon. I'm going to try and make some tea beforehand, and also stop talking because I lose my voice so quickly when I do YouTube videos. So I'm gonna get ready and do that, and then we will talk a little bit more about some of the things that I have been reflecting on in my own personal practice, and like where I want to grow in my practice, because I think like kind of figuring out like different areas of your practice that you want to deepen into is always really fun and exciting. But I understand a lot of folks like get a little overwhelmed. They're like, oh my gosh, like there's just so much going on, but like what more could I do? But yeah, we'll talk about that after my meeting. But yeah. Successfully had my meeting today around lunch, and then I had something quick to eat. But yeah, very good meeting today. Really excited to see this project out, which that will unfold when it is time to. But anyways, so I was mentioning how like, you know, now is not necessarily the time to be planning new things because we're just so deep in winter. So I've been doing a lot of personal reflecting, and with that I have reflected a lot on my personal practice and my witchcraft. And you know, I think expanding in your craft is really important. It expands who you are, it expands your skills, it expands like your spiritual relationships and the relationship that you have with yourself. With that, I have been thinking about like areas in my practice that I really want to expand on and kind of like deepen for this upcoming like spring and summertime. One of the things that I want to do is kind of establish a, sorry, my dog is itching. Thanks, Boone. Thanks for that. One of the things that I have begun to do, but I want to really do consistently is visit my local cemeteries to get to know the land spirits more. Obviously, being a new resident here in the Pacific Northwest, I don't have the established roots that I had back in North Carolina. And so getting familiar with the spirits that used to live here prior to me is one of the ways that I can best learn the energy of this place. I have started to visit one of the local cemeteries. There's actually quite a few around us where we live right now. So there's one that I pass through when I visit my husband at work, and it is very small, but it's very intimate, and I have such good energy there. Like, it feels very welcoming. Sundays are typically a day that I like to dedicate to ancestral veneration, and with me getting to know the ancestors of this land, I think that is kind of something that I'll begin to do on Sundays, and just start to really open myself to building these relationships, because that has been something that has like been holding me back in terms of moving here and creating like a practice that feels really regionalized and local. So that is one thing that I am hoping to expand on in my practice and where I want to grow. And I think with that too, like really starting to deepen my herbal medicine and my herbal practice with these new local native plants. So obviously one of the ways that we can do this is researching and kind of, you could take classes in person or online, or also go to your local library and kind of research native plants. And I have a few books about it. I started to get acquainted with them last year, kind of being able to recognize what is what, visiting local parks and like knowing where I can find certain plant allies like nettle. I have a park that I go to that I know has an abundance of nettle, kind of expanding on that. And there is a national forest that we live close to that I want to start to visit more often and be able to find like those trails that are just like my go-tos, especially when it comes to foraging. So that is obviously something that I want to expand on, especially when it comes to like spring and summertime, is to really start to deepen my herbal practice with local plants. As you can see, a lot of this is like reflecting on localizing my practice more, and obviously so much of my foundation is Appalachian rooted, and that has been helpful because there are plants out here that are also found in Appalachia, so there is some like crossover there, but there is a lot out here that is not over there. And so it really is kind of like introducing myself into just like a whole new world, and I think that's really exciting, and it's also intimidating. This year I really want to give myself the opportunity to build that foundation here and to become a Pacific Northwest witch and really start to become familiar with the spirits here. Another thing that I want to expand on in my practice is my intuition. I think that intuition building and becoming so in tune with your spirit is one of the most fruitful aspects of your foundation with a practice, because ultimately it's going to help lead you in the direction that feels right for you. Also, when you have really important decisions to make, or just certain areas in your life where you're faced with challenges, your intuition can be that guidance as well as supporting spirits in your practice. So I think for me, for years, like the last 5 years, I feel like I was in a constant state of questioning myself and my voice, because anytime I had verbally expressed myself or had something to say, there was always this lingering outside voice that would fight against it, or just say that it wasn't right, or it wasn't truthful, or it was wrong. And so I really did feel that narrative of myself in my mind. And so last year I really started to focus that in my therapy work of like honoring my voice, trusting that I know myself better than anyone else knows me. And if I feel like something's wrong, or if I experience something, like that is my truth, and to own my truth. And I did a lot of that work last year, and going into this year, I feel I have like a newfound confidence, and I have like this new chapter that I'm starting for myself, that I can like, I'm in such a cocoon right now, but I really do feel like there's change coming up, like in the spring and the summer. And I think in my personal life, there's so many things that are lining up for that to be true. And this morning I obviously had my astrology reading with my friend, and that was totally validating too, of just like the timing of everything. So I think that I am on the midst of something really great. But in between then, just giving myself the space to rest and to be okay with taking this time for myself and not feeling the external pressure of like producing and just like starting new things. Like, it's okay to just like go within and just to continue to assess those things for yourself, and then allow nature to let you know when it is time to start new. Thank you so much for being here and for creating such a magical space with me. If you have any like thoughts, or if you are wanting to see something specific, if you're like, I'd really love to see what kind of witchy books you're reading, like fiction and not, or like what are your favorite whatever, like anything that you want to see or get to know me a little bit more, please leave a comment and let me know. Other than that, I will see you in the next one.